A very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. I'm Jeffrey Ozon, as always, and with my people, but just one today, Bukola Koka.
And that's why it's the Wednesday of strength. Against all odds, we're here, rolling up our sleeves to do our bit. Good morning and welcome to the perfect morning starter on Channels Television. It's the Morning Brief. I am Bukola Koka, and we're live for you here in our nation's commercial capital.
Well, I'm sure you're wondering why Kaide is not here, okay? There's an explanation. A little under the weather, so we just told him, go to drink some tea, drink a lot of water, sleep a little more, don't worry about yourself, just take care of yourself. So we miss you, Kaide. Just take care of yourself. As soon as you're ready to go, we're here to do what we love to do. So we just needed to put that out there so that everyone who is wondering will know exactly what is going on. Because what's been happening?
Yes, we miss Kade. And by the way, if Kade is watching now, you better go back to bed and rest.
That's what we used to tell you, but you never listened.
Yes.
You never listened, by the way.
So, Jeffrey, I should ask you, what's happening?
Well, the job we do is about watching what's going on in the polity, the big ones, the Dangote issue, the big ones, the planned protests, and all of those things going on. So we're just watching the polity and looking at all of the commentaries and the fireworks that is coming through. At the end of the day, if we look through all of the lines, the fact is that people just want a better country. How we want to prosecute that idea is what we may disagree over, and which is going to form part of our conversation. But good news, some things happened. The House of the National Assembly has actually passed that bill. We're going to talk about that as well. But I feel that as a people and as a government, there's a responsibility on all of us to make Nigeria work. I don't think anybody's anybody's enemy. There's something I usually notice when it comes to the polity. People are quick to call people enemies. And I think it's a very sad commentary when people are making demands. And I'm happy that some appeal is also coming from the president. That's the language one should expect from the leadership at that level. But this classification, inundation with, oh, this person is my enemy, this is that motivated, it's not going to help anybody at the end of the day.
Indeed, Jeffrey, and making Nigeria work also has a lot to do with, making institutions and infrastructure work. We've been at, the challenge of fuel scarcity. We've been amid the challenge of fuel scarcity for decades, since the 70s.
72.
Exactly. And so if the refineries, so much money has been invested in the refineries, and, they have not been working since the turnaround maintenance have, started, then, we need to reflect as a nation. There have been several dates, but this time around, we've been told that, August is the start date for the Port Harcourt refinery on the first, in the first place to begin working. Then Nigerians are expectant. We've also been told that the Dangote refinery, although that comes also with a lot of controversy, but it's important that, the naughty issues be untangled, such that, such an investment that Nigeria also, put some part in should be made to work. The politics really must be set aside, because at the end of the day, if that refinery begins to work, thousands of people will be employed. A good measure of foreign exchange will be kept back home. So why shouldn't we make what is ours, what is our own collective commonwealth, work? I think that's just what Nigerians are asking. Let's stop petrol importation such that we can have some economic stability, and every other thing that hinges around, petrol, transportation, price of foodstuff, can also have some stability in the next few months. Besides that, any form of appeal, from the government would just, be grandstanding as far as Nigerians are concerned, because between that and what's in the market, there's a far cry. And if Nigerians, regardless of the appeals by the federal government, go out on the streets to protest, it's their constitutional right, and government is bound through its security agencies to offer protection for Nigerians who want to protest. And this is certainly not a call to anarchy, but a demand for some form of accountability. for Nigeria to work, which is, an uncanny way of starting the show this day.
So all of us have a responsibility as citizens, as government, but what we constantly tell the government is the fact that even in 2016, when we had the recession, things were not this tough in terms of prices of food. We understand the twin policy of government that has brought us here. So however they want to work this out, we'll be delighted to see it work out, because if Nigeria works, all of us work. And we must mention that one of the secrets to helping Nigeria move ahead is transparency in the NNPCL. There is a lot with the NNPCL that is still unclear, and we'll continue to say this until the government do something about the NNPCL. Just the addition of limited doesn't change much. There's a lot of transparency that is required within the NNPCL. But hey, apart from that, let's talk about the lighter issues, please. Sometimes I wonder, when the government built Colta express roads or the roads with Colta, is it for human beings or for vehicle? Because I drive, and then some people...
Jeffrey, that's not a light issue. That's a serious issue.
No, because when I'm driving, you're seeing a car coming, and look, you have to race through the road because you don't know whether that car may have failed brake, anything could have happened. People just stroll across the road. Come on. You're putting your life in danger. You have to be careful out there. It may not be that the person is trying to hurt you. It could just be that something has happened to the car, and they say it's story that touch. So these are the small things within our spaces as civilians, as citizens, we should take cognizance of. I keep shouting about new garage and places in Lagos where these buses leave where they're supposed to park, and they come literally into the express, so you're forced to drive through. So all of these little things that we need to do to just help ourselves. This one has nothing to do with Bola Tinubu, the president, or Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the governor of Lagos State in this instance. It has to do with us and taking responsibility as a people.
Well, Jeffrey, if I will add any other thing to that, it will be something just as important, which is, the continued presence of articulated vehicles on our roads. We know that the NRC had, done something to the effect that, that there's been cargo transport available, but the challenges in that area and what measure, of industries are patronizing the rail for cargo transport still leaves much to be desired, because there's still a huge presence of articulated vehicles on our roads. And more often than not, those vehicles are not roadworthy. They do not comply with rules. And, the tankers on there are not well keyed into the flatbed. Sometimes even their brakes are not working. And I say this for good reason. An accident sometime last month on that road was as a result of brake failure of one of the articulated vehicles involved in that accident. So many lives have been lost over the years to such incidents. So what's the Federal Road Safety Corps and every other security agent doing in that regard? They go after the smaller vehicles or the SUVs that have the capacity to pay fines and shore up government revenue. But what about capacity building to be able to make those articulated vehicles comply with the rules on the roads? Sound like a broken record. I've said this over and over again, but perhaps we will not stop, speaking to these issues.
All right. Well, let's bring you all to speed with what exactly we are doing today as far as the show is concerned now. Well, it's now a done deal, at least from the legislative end of the bargain, which has to do with Nigerian workers. And Nigerian workers will now be earning as much as, should I use the word as much as, let's say 70,000 naira to be safe on this one. Because the minimum wage bill, the amended minimum wage bill, has now passed third reading and has been approved by the National Assembly, and it will be forwarded to the President for assent. What does this mean in principle, and how will this affect the macroeconomic dynamics going forward? An economist will be joining us to unpack all of the fine lines.
And that's not all. The federal government has recently initiated incentives to boost pharmaceutical products in the country, through that executive order. But what other measures can be put in place, to ensure the domestic production of pharmaceutical products in the country? And has that executive order in the first place been put to test. So what's the feedback that we're getting from the number of pharmaceutical industries that remain in the country? We know that some, have left over the last year or two. So we're going to be reviewing all of those issues. And, you can also bring your concerns to the table as well. How much are you buying that drug that you need, to address that particular health condition? We understand that the price of drugs, have skyrocketed. Exactly. Also as a result of, this Forex challenge.
That's despite all of the intervention. But that's not all for you, of course. We're going to go to what we call the softer side of things. His unique voice, his vocal dexterity. He found himself in stiff competition, but he emerged winner of Nigerian Idol. Progress will be joining us on the program to tell us how he's been managing fame after this very, very, very competitive situation he found himself some years ago.
And of course, you know that you're the third this time around, the third panelist.
Third and fourth.
Third and fourth panelists on the show. So you can join the conversation on all our social media handles. Start texting your own truth, your reactions pretty much to all of these issues. And you can also send us your questions and comments to our WhatsApp handle and your videos as well, so that we can help amplify your voice. It's your community show on Channels Television. It's the Morning Brief, and we'll begin unfolding top stories after this break.
So join us again. Well, top on the brief this morning is the speedy passage of several bills in the bicameral chambers of the National Assembly. The lawmakers considered and passed an amendment to the Minimum Wage Act, increasing the sum to 70,000 naira for the least paid worker, and also provides a 3-year periodic review of the act. Also approved is the amended 2024 budget, now pegged at 35.05 trillion naira, pursuant to a letter by the president seeking additional 6.2 trillion naira for capital and recurrent spendings. However, the lawmakers increased it to 6.28 trillion naira. Other bills passed are the Finance Act Amendment Bill, the Police Act Amendment Bill, among others.
A bill for an act to amend the National Minimum Wage Act 2019 and to increase the national minimum wage and reduce the time for periodic review of the national minimum wage from 5 years to 3 years, and for related matters 2024. Third reading.
Well, in the Green Chambers, representatives want the federal government to suspend the chief executive of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Authority, Farouk Ahmed, pending conclusions of investigation into allegations against the authority. This follows a motion of urgent need to address the outrage resulting from unguarded comment by Mr. Farouk. Mr. Sosa Iyowe, who moved the motion, notes that the chief executive of the NNDPRA had stated that the diesel produced by Dangote refinery is inferior to the ones imported into the country, and that their fuel had a large content of sulfur, which empirically was countered by the president of Dangote Group, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, who seeks independent testing. And this has called for question to the quality of imported petroleum products into the country.
He is also concerned that the unguarded statement by the chief executive of this agency, which has since been disapproved, sparks an outrage of Nigerians who tagged his undemnely and local refineries as insistence on the continued importation of fuel, an act of economic sabotage, as the imported products have been shown to contain high levels of dangerous compounds. Mr. Speaker, the House resolves to call the federal government to suspend the chief executive of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Authority pending conclusive investigations into the allegations against the authority.
Well, besides a busy legislative day, a federal lawmaker representing Imo East Senatorial District, Ezenwanye Wuchi, has dumped the Labour Party for the All Progressives Congress. Senate Majority Leader Kwame Bamidele announced Onyewuchi's defection during plenary on Tuesday, and just next door as well, a member of the House representing Mr. Salman Idris also defected from the African Democratic Congress to the APC. The lawmaker who represents Kaba Bunu Ijumu Federal Constituency, the Green Chambers, officially announced his political decision in a letter read to the floor on the floor of the House on Tuesday by the Speaker, Abbas Tajuddin.
The strangers are coming in to witness the cross-carpeting of one of our distinguished colleagues.
In the meantime, a challenge has been thrown to Alhaji Aliko Dangote by the NNPCL Group Chief Executive Officer Mele Kyari to name NNPCL officials who own blending plants in Malta, maintaining that he does not own a blending plant. Mr. Kyari says he does not know of any employee of the NNPCL who owns such a facility in the island country in Europe. In a post on the microblogging site X, he asked the president of Dangote Group, Alhaji Dangote, to publicly declare the NNPCL personnel who operate a blending plant in that country. Over the weekend, Africa's richest man and the owner of the $20 billion Dangote refinery in Lagos says some NNPCL personnel and oil traders operate a blending plant in Malta, thereby frustrating local production of petroleum products. Let's get to that appeal from the nation's #1 citizen, President Bola Tinubu, asking organizers of the End Bad Governance protest to shelve the plan slated for August the 1st, that is next month. The president his appeal was conveyed by the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, after meeting with his principal in the State House. According to him, they should wait for the president's response to all their pleas that border on economic hardship and the rising inflation across the country.
Mr. President has asked me to, again, inform Nigerians that he listens to them, especially the young people that are trying to protest. Mr. President is listening to them. He takes what they say seriously and is working assiduously to ensure that this country is good, not just for today, but also for the future. The issue of the planned protest, Mr. President does not see any need for that. He's asked them to shelve that plan. He's asked them to await government's response to all their pleas. He has listened to them, like I said, and a lot is happening. Only today, the National Assembly has expeditiously passed the new national minimum wage. You can see how the president is working. It was transmitted only yesterday. Today, it has been passed. A lot of other interventions that the president has also put in place are also going to be looked at expeditiously in the interest of Nigeria. So there's no need for strike. The young people out there should listen to the president and allow the president more time to see to the realization of all the goodies he has for them. For example, you saw that the federal government approved grains for and rice for state governments. It was delivered to them expeditiously also. The federal government is not, like I said that the other time, that it is not the necessary first step. Government is going to continue in that direction, supporting them and ensuring that whatever intervention that the federal government has put in place go to those that should benefit. It is very important that that is being put out. Federal government is looking at strategies to ensure that every intervention goes directly to those who benefit from those interventions, not middlemen.
In the meantime, the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, in sharing his perspective on the planned protest, describes it as politically motivated. He sees the planned protest as a decoy to divert the attention of Nigerians from efforts by the president, that's the President Bola Tinubu-led administration. Mr. Wike appeals to Nigerians to be patient with the federal government as modalities are being worked out to bring succor to citizens. Let's now talk business. The tightening continues as the Central Bank of Nigeria has again raised monetary policy rate MPR, which measures interest rate by 50 basis points to 26.75%. That's from 26.25% amid soaring inflation, skyrocketing food prices. The Apex Bank's governor, Olayemi Cardoso, announced this after the bank's 296th Monetary Policy Committee meeting in Abuja on Tuesday. The MPC adjusted the asymmetric corridor around the MPR from plus 100 to minus 300 to plus 500 to minus 100 that's basis point. It retained the cash reserve ratio, that's the CRR, of deposit money banks at 45%, merchant banks at 14%, and retained the liquidity ratio at 30%. Away from our shores, the United States, in that country, while the two big parties are racing against time to rally support for the candidates of their choice, U.S. Secret Service Director Kim Chittle has resigned after security failures surrounding an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. In a resignation letter to the agency staff, Chittle says she takes full responsibility for the security lapses. She had faced calls from both the Democrats and Republicans to step down after a contentious House committee hearing on Monday about the incident. Lawmakers were quite infuriated and unhappy when she refused to answer questions about the shooting at Trump's campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania earlier this month. Well, she now has a replacement. Now, barely days to the Olympics, Team Great Britain, Charlotte Dujardin, has dropped out of the Olympics and provisionally banned for 6 months over a video from 4 years ago, allegedly showing her hitting a horse leg several times. The three-time Olympic champion said the video showed her making what she describes as an error of judgment during a coaching session. While she pulls out of the competition, the International Federation for Equestrian Sports, that's the FEI, will investigate the incident. Well, those are the stories we've been tracking for you, say, in the last 24 hours and earlier today, will form and shape part of our conversation for the program and perhaps the rest of the day. Bukola joins me now as we find out exactly what you're saying on X. Bukola.
Yes, indeed. Nigerians are saying quite a lot, and it's quoted as usual with the humor that we've come to enjoy and a bit of skepticism as well, particularly when it comes to policy that affects them in one way or the other. But this morning, we're starting with your reactions to the CBN's Monetary Policy Committee meeting, raising interest rate by 50 basis points to 26.75%, well, amid soaring inflation, evidently. And the first reaction comes from Professor Imonoka Enakena, who says, the raise of interest rate will stifle business growth and expansion. This is not the right time for this economic nauseating policy that is anti-people. This shows that they don't believe genuinely that Nigerians are suffering. They become desperate, destitute. Many are homeless, and many have dropped out of school. Some have committed suicide, and unemployment rates are growing. Many more SMEs are folding daily due to this draft economic policy.
Well, he calls it daft, not even draft.
Oh.
All right. Muyeto says this really is. I guess you wanted to say this is really a welcome development. I guess long-awaiting achievement is even long overdue. Thank you. Okay, I don't know. Thank you very much, official ABC-led government. I guess this may be sarcasm.
This is not, if this is official okay. The writer is copying official APC government, so this may be sarcasm, as you said, Jeffrey. Yeah. Well, this next talking point is from Joseph, who says it's a contractionary measure to encourage saving and thereby curb inflation. The current state of the economy requires such as there are too much money in circulation chasing fewer goods.
That is his diagnostics, by the way.
Yeah, but what about all the other issues,
all right. It's not as simple as that.
Businesses, needing to secure loans, but they are unable to secure loans at this interest rate, and the impact on the service sector, so to speak.
All right, let's be. Chukuvin says, this is not funny, I beg. Increase minimum wage, increase interest rate, and then inflation soars. At the end, the minimum wage increase becomes next to nothing. This math is not mathing, I beg.
Okay, so let's go to the next talking point this morning. NAS speedily passes 70,000 naira minimum wage. And the first person reacting this morning is Joy for You, who says, let them also pass to bill compulsory payment of overtime to employees, calculated at an hourly rate higher than the normal hourly rate. Employees' time schedule needs to be respected. Well, the minimum wage policy in Nigeria doesn't... it doesn't
do wage, it does salaries.
Doesn't do per hour, it does salaries. Yeah.
BP Massey with plenty of numbers. A lot of people in the federal health sector have not been paid their salary 6 to 7 months now. Hashtag Nigerian Ministry of Health. Out of the fear of the coming protest, you guys went ahead to approve a bill you know that is impossible to pay.
Well, we're going to subject all of that to scrutiny later on the program. But this next person says, and that will be Great of Network, says, congratulations to you and all the stakeholders under your ministry for being able to spearhead and secure this minimum wage. Your efforts and struggles were not in vain. As I said in one of my posts, more is needed in addressing labor issues through engagement.
Akia Folabi says they know what's coming. They don't want to lose guard. Honestly, Nigeria can be better, a greater country, if not for the tribal and religious manipulation by those in key posts. All right, let's move on to the next one. Representatives, that's the House of Reps now, about NERC, that's the regulator of the electricity sector, and this goes to reverse Ban A tariff hike. So Sulaiman Sukomi says, yet we all want a working country. Whoever says having a stable electricity is cheap probably didn't understand the whole thing. Nigeria, we are not ready.
I wonder where we're going to move from, these kinds of conversations. But this next one is from Adeoye Lambo, who says, the electricity tariff should be uniform. If Band A enjoy more of our light, I believe, of course, we call power supply in this part light, they should pay according to their consumption. Yeah.
Okay, so for context, the government is paying a lot in terms of subsidy. There's fuel, because I don't understand why the president will say, I'll give you 250 and increase fuel price if he's not paying subsidy, if it's deregulated. So they are paying subsidy. There's no argument.
Evidently.
But even if they don't agree to, even if they don't want to say it, they are paying subsidy in electricity. They are defending the naira. Sorry, electricity, petrol, naira. There's a lot going on. Anyway, let's take you back to the National Assembly. This time, remember a few days ago, last week, when Senator Godswill Akpabio had kind of reprimanded Senator Natasha Akpoti when
because she had not been asked to speak.
She has not been asked to speak, and she spoke. But she apologized quickly, but he made a remark that some people consider sexist when he said, this is not the nightclub. But he's gone on to apologize. Take a listen to him.
A public apology to you over the miscommunication and the misunderstanding. So do accept my apologies, and my colleagues, or anybody who could have felt offended, accept my apologies. I did not mean any harm, and I did not mean what they are misinterpreting in the social media. And I hope this will come to an end, and people should concentrate on things that will move this country forward, and not things that will divide us. So.
Yeah, he's made, if I was to speak to the Senate president, I think if I were to advise him, I would have just said, apologize and don't add anything. Because some of the things he now said may also be misinterpreted. So when you're in that position of power, your words should be fewer, because everything you say means a lot. But this is what the people are saying. Sampa Fidelis says, I like how he addressed the issue. Politicians should be responsible to the people, not to take them for granted.
And this next person, Adekunle Philip, says, this is honorable. I say it as I know it. Apologizing to Senator Natasha publicly is a good start for Mr. Senate President. What he has to do for the Nigerian people is to be more interested in the welfare of Nigerians, not just about sending prayers to his colleagues. Trust Nigerians not to let this bit of humanity go without demanding more of it in other areas. And that's just fair.
Yeah.
If our elected public office holders can be listening like this, then they can also demonstrate their humanity in other areas, particularly that affect the people, by reducing the cost of governance.
Yeah, that's why you need to keep talking. Don't stop talking. Let's talk about the president appealing to the protesters who are converging on different locations across the country on August the 1st to protest against economic hardship. He's saying he's appealing to them to shelve their plan and give him some time. Well, this is what you're saying on X. Salem David 95. You say a government that spends more on medical tourism and gift for already wealthy lawmakers and can't address the issue of middlemen in the agri sector. Ripping the poor apart is a selfish government. All we want is to be able to feed and have access to social amenities.
And the next person reacting is Morenike Obutolu, who says, let the president enhance and, as a matter of urgency, revive all social investment programs end power backlogs should be paid immediately in order to allow the youth who are beneficiaries use them judiciously and improve the current conditions.
Flourish 007 says he needs to see himself and address the nation about what he's doing to alleviate the hardship. He should speak directly in a language people understand and stop sending intermediaries. Bats traveled around the country to campaign and dance to the music from a broom, even though he made no promises. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Which is planned national protest.
Yes, this is coming from
politically motivated.
This is coming from Nyesom Wike, the FCT minister. Well, he's a politician.
Yes, indeed.
So,
and the first person speaking this morning is Aminu Abdul Hamid Abdullahi, who says, nothing political. The government missed best step to avert, I believe, the grievance of the youth. The government should stop, I believe, all the poverty alleviation programs which the youth benefit. Empower to humanitarian assistance, palliatives for workers. Well,
all right, so
that wasn't quite coherent.
Yes, we have a lot to bring people up to speed with. The next one has to do with, which is last week, Bayo Onanuga, the presidential aide, one of the aides of the president, speaks for the president, had accused Peter Obi and all of that for being behind the protest. And the Obi people came out and said, look, we have no hand in all of this. We're not part of all of this. But
indeed, just on Monday, I believe, we had the spokesperson of the Obidati.
Yes, Eunice Tanko. And we're still waiting for either Ajurin Galali or Bayo Onanuga himself to come on the show. Let's have that conversation. Well, Obi is demanding an apology. Peter Obi, His Excellency, the former governor of Anambra State, as well as 5 billion naira from Tinubu's aid. He threatens a lawsuit. This person, Yung Gubna, says, I love this, and Peter needs not to be keeping quiet to all of the malicious defamation henceforth.
And Unifier Benway says, it's a demand for public apology and payment of 5 billion naira for damages, failure of which an action for defamation and libel would be instituted against Bayo. Pretty much reiterating what has been said already.
All right, so we understand that Governor Obasanya is raising an alarm that the North is on the brink of collapse. There are so many things going on in that part of the country. All of the numbers, or most of the numbers point in that direction. Out of school children, poverty, insecurity, and that's why perhaps he's raising this alarm. Sunday Adekomi says, Northern leaders should be held responsible, not President Bola Tinubu. What they have done with what have they done with allocation being collected monthly?
Yeah, well, this is a challenge as much as it is a test for the northern governors, who, by the way, converged recently for a summit, on the way forward to developing the North. So they must move beyond conferences and summits
and talk shop
to acting on, developing a Marshall Plan for the North. Well, this next one is from Akubulu, who says the North is doing so well. Today, Kano has 2 emirs. Who would have imagined this several years ago? The North is very okay. That's a bit of sarcasm as well.
There's a lot of, it's just on the lighter side, but it's not funny. There are challenges all over the place. When it comes to the twos, I call that the tales of twos. 2 emirs in Kano, 2 houses of assembly in River State, 2 deputy governors in Edo State. So there's enough two to go around, but that's not the conversation. The first conversation has to do with the minimum wage and how it impacts the economy. The interest rate has just been increased by 50 basis points. The experts are here to bring us up to speed as to what all of this means to our macroeconomic outlook. Join us again after this break.
If you leave accounts dormant in banks. Sometimes more than when you don't leave them dormant in banks. In fact, most times they are more susceptible to fraudsters copying your identity and trying to game the system to grab hold of your money. Okay, so that is a problem that I think most money banks face. And I'm sure if you've been on the receiving end, I have been, then you know that anything that can protect you in the process from these kinds of predators will be welcome. The policy and the directive is meant to ensure that all those monies come to the central bank for safekeeping. You don't lose your money. You don't lose your money. And it's at zero cost to the beneficiaries. All that will happen is that the central bank will manage the monies within our possession, and when the rightful owner surfaces, the money is returned plus whatever income is accrued to you. And I think this should be a welcome development, even from the naysayers, because at a time like this, we recognize the fact that everybody needs every single penny that belongs to them.
Our first conversation has to do with the economy. You heard the CBN Governor Laimi Cardoso defending some of the policies that is coming through, and of course the interest rate has now been raised. So I want to see how this affects the economy in general. We're being joined in the program by Johnson Chukwu, is the MD Cowrie Asset Management Limited, and economist. Mr. Chukwu, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for having me. Good morning.
All right, Mr. Chukwu, maybe you help us to speak first to the issue of the increase in interest rate. First, do you agree that it's okay to further increase, although it's not as the other ones, they say it was draconian, but this looks like just 50 basis points. What do you make of this new interest rate?
In the first place, I had predicted that the central bank was likely going to increase the rate by between 25 basis points and 50 basis points. So I had most expected it. And that was coming from the body language of the central bank governor, who had said that as long as inflationary pressure subsists, that they will continue to increase interest rates. But then, if you look at the logic or the reasoning behind the increase, it's a variance with the action they took. The CBN governor had said that the inflationary pressure is coming from increase in food prices as a result of insecurity in the food producing communities, and then increase in energy costs. So these factors will not be addressed by increasing rates. They have to be addressed by increasing food production, as well as stabilizing the exchange rate so that the pass-through effect of increase in exchange rate on fuel prices, on diesel prices will be moderated. The other aspect of the energy cost increase is coming from electricity tariff, which part of which, if you look at a multi-year tariff order, part of it dependent on exchange rate. So if you have a stable exchange rate, the increase in energy costs will moderate. But the greatest pressure is coming from food. And if you look at food inflation at about 40.87%, it has nothing to do with the level of liquidity in the economy. So I think the logic behind the decision is at variance with the action they took. But I had predicted it because they had made it clear, and they had said, the CBN governor had said consistently that his priority is to manage the price level or to maintain price stability. And as long as the pressure subsists, he will or they will continue to increase interest rates.
So I'm wondering, because despite whether it's a draconian or does the moderate increase or the marginal increase, inflation, although the rate month to month is not as aggressive as it used to be, but it's still going up. So is this a question of misdiagnosis in the first instance, or the fundamental legacy issue will continue to tear out whatever policy that the MPC is putting out if they are not addressed at the end of the day, because we are seeing other systems around the world who have targets, and we're seeing them meeting those targets, inflation tapering, because their fundamentals are not as bad as ours.
Well, it's not a case of misdiagnosis because, like I said, the central bank governor had said that the pressures is coming from food prices, which is true, that the pressure is coming from pass-through effects of increase in energy costs, which is true, and that, so it's not a case of misdiagnosis. It is more of a case of situation where the central bank is constrained by some structural deficiencies in the economy. If you look at the pressures that we're having today, and you look at what are those factors driving it, we talk about if you disaggregate inflation in the month of June, the greatest pressure is coming from increase in price of non-alcoholic beverages, food and non-alcoholic beverages, followed by increase in energy costs, transport costs. Then you go to increase in housing. These are not, the pressures are not because we are having so much of liquidity in the economy that you and I are borrowing cheap and therefore are demanding for so much goods. We already know that interest rates are high and there's no consumer credit in the country. So in other countries, like you have in advanced countries, the major transmission channel for monetary policy is consumer credit in most economies. And this is the logic of what happens. If you have an increase in interest rates, consumers will be able to borrow either their credit card or whatever means they're using to borrow so that they continue to buy goods and services. As long as they are not borrowing, the demand for goods and services slow down. But those are based on assumption you are dealing with where demand outstrips supply because the demand is also backed by capacity to pay. That's the converse in our own case. We're dealing with collapse of consumer demand, but we're also dealing with high inflation rate. So you don't have money to buy, but then prices are still going up. So it's not a case of demand outstripping supply. You are not going to address it by slowing down demand. What you need is to address the issue of supply. So what we are dealing with in Nigeria is a supply-induced inflation and not demand-induced, not demand pull, but is rather supply-driven inflation, where you have insufficient supply, and then people are trying to scramble with the little money they have for the little goods that are available, which is what's happening in food inflation.
Now, let's check on the impact of this increase on manufacturers and other categories of MSMEs. How would it affect them, so to speak? And within the context of that, the federal government had said that it is offering them 1 billion naira credit, as against the high interest rate that has now been pushed up yet again, but they have still not accessed it. But even at 9% for manufacturers, when they eventually access it, how easy will it be for them to be able to, do business in the country in the light of the, other economic realities that they're grappling with?
Interestingly, in Nigeria, the small and medium-scale enterprises and the manufacturers are the worst off in the economic landscape. You know why? They are dealing with too many variables, and most of them are negative. I had mentioned the issue of lack of consumer demand. But at the cost part of it, you are dealing with high energy costs, which the central bank governor alluded to. And then you have to deal with high interest costs. And not only high interest costs, limited access to those funds. Banks are not even lending today. So even with the high interest costs, the banks are not going to give you money. Assuming they give you money and they lend to you at 35%, which is, I think, the minimum most banks are lending at, what kind of business are you doing that you are going to make a gross margin of more than 35% as to pay the bank its interest and still be able to cover your operating costs? So that's one aspect. Then you have to deal with higher increasing operating costs because of existing inflationary pressure. So if the central bank eventually disburses the 1 billion naira per manufacturer, it will act as palliative. It will probably help some of them, depending on the size of their operation. Most businesses have gone beyond 1 billion naira because of the loss of value of the local currency. But assuming it's a small and medium-scale enterprise that's still working within 1 billion naira operating capital, operating cash flow needs, then it will help a lot. The single-digit inflation will be a game changer for a business that was rolling at 35% if you have to pay 9%. But you still have to contend with other inclement or constraining factors, which I had mentioned earlier. People are not even buying goods. So there's low demand for goods and services. Two, you have to deal with high energy costs. You have to deal with high other infrastructure costs. You have to deal with unstable labor. A lot of skilled people are leaving the country. So if you are in the manufacturing sector or in the service industry, you know you have to deal with a lot of the Japa syndrome, because almost on daily basis, your most competent hands are leaving. You have to deal with that. So these are factors that will continue to constrain the manufacturing sector. But having said that, any palliative is welcomed. Any intervention by the government that will reduce one or two of these limiting factors to the manufacturing sector will be welcome.
Now let's move to the other issues affecting the economy, which is the speedy passage of the minimum wage bill. Some would say that it is indeed a welcome development. Speaking of the body language of the presidency, particularly amid calls for protest. But let's also, focus on the states and their capacity to pay. Are we looking at another round of consultations and another delay? And based on your knowledge of states and their economic viability, what are you seeing happening within the next month or two?
Because I think any state that wants to pay should be able to pay. It's about prioritizing. If you look at what the states have received in the first 6 months of this year, total amount of PAC allocation that have been received by the states, excluding what they call 13% derivatives, is 2.4 trillion naira. Last year, the first 6 months of last year, it was 1.6 trillion naira. So you have seen an increase of about 50% on their PAC allocations. Many states that are forward-looking, that are properly managed, will also be growing their internal generated revenue, because with the loss of value of the local currency, the values that they will be getting would have increased. Then, for those states that are part of the derivative, their income has also further increased. So any state that wants to focus on increasing the wage bill of its employees should be able to do that. I don't think it's a matter of the state can afford it. It's a matter of what are they prioritizing. What is the core? I'll give an instance. Almost every state in the country, the governor receives, takes out security vote at least 500 million naira per month. That will have a huge impact if you have to distribute that evenly to employees in terms of increasing their wage bill or their wages. So I don't think in terms of, it's all about priorities. Those state government had already, you could say it has some political connotation, had already started paying 70,000 naira per month. And though it's not a major beneficiary of even the 13% derivative. So I think the state governors should be able to pay. The truth is that you have to balance governance. Governance, they tell you, is about improving the welfare of the citizens as well as the security of lives and properties. If you look at that, then you recognize that that should be your priority number one. Most citizens are going through difficulty, which is why you have alluded to the issue of threatening strike by the citizens or demonstrations. So whatever is required to improve their living standard, the government must do it. That's the first priority of the government in this country. Well, that's what our constitution says.
Mr. Chukwu, just to piggyback on what Bukola asked, that is the ideal. Ideally, with the increased FAC we're seeing across board, we should not be having complaints about the ability to pay. But when it was just 30,000 naira, we had some states unable to pay 30,000, and now we have 70,000 naira. It appears we can almost predict that if they can't pay 30, they will not be able to pay 70. In such states, what should be done? How should workers respond to such situation?
If any state, I give an instance. Somebody said that refused to pay the 30,000 were the states that we had the highest level of allegation, let me use the right word, allegation of the governors mismanaging the state resources. So, like I said, it's all a matter of priority. So if a state government refuses to pay and the minimum wage is legislated upon, it's a breach of the constitution that the governor of that state had sworn to protect or to defend. If a governor breaks the law, then the system must find a way of addressing a breach of the law by a governor. Because if it becomes a law, which is why it's going to the National Assembly, it has to be legislated upon, and it becomes binding on all of us as employers of labor. So if a governor cannot pay, then the civil servants should use the legislature to compel the governors to pay. That is assuming things are working properly. Unfortunately, in the country today, the legislatures are integral part of the executive. But assuming you have the checks and balances that our constitution had intended in its format, then the legislature would have called the state governor to order and then probably compelled him to pay. But like I said, it's not a matter of lack of capacity. We've seen a 50% increase in the allocation going to the states across board. And what that means is that if the state governors just reallocate their expenditure and prioritize on payment of salaries and wages, they will achieve that. But also there are caveats. Some states' payroll are filled with ghost workers. Some state governors actually accept that situation because it serves as a conduit for them to sort away money for other political interests. So if you have situations like that, you need to downsize, rightize your public service. You can actually ask people for voluntary retirement and pay them one-off terminal benefits so that you will have a fit and effective civil servant. Because you also need increase in productivity, because when we talk of increase in minimum wage, we also have to align it with the increase in productivity. As you're giving employees higher income or higher remuneration, they also need to produce more to justify the higher income. But it has to be driven by the policies and the effectiveness of leadership at the state and the federal levels.
Mr. Achukwu, already we know that the government is already in arrears because they had promised, at least at the federal level, that this payment will start sometime in May, but Labour is even saying it should start sometime in April, given the fact that the other act, this is an amended act, had expired as at the middle of April. But let's move to the issue, just going back to staying with this issue of minimum wage. How is the private sector receiving the news? I know they were part of the negotiation. Is this also going to be a challenge for them?
If I have to use the comments made by the private sector groups like NECA, Nigerian Employers Consultative Assembly, I think the private sector accepted the magnitude of the increase in good faith. Because when I said the magnitude of increase, you remember that the argument by Labour was about 250,000, which the private sector said it would be difficult. It could lead to loss of jobs. But increasing from 30,000 to 60,000 was mostly accepted by the private sector leaders based on what their groups had said. But beyond that, you also, I think Manufacturers Association of Nigeria also thanked and appreciated the president for the increase to 70,000 naira only. But I also recognize that the president said the federal government will support some private sector operators to make sure that they pay. That there may be some small and medium scale enterprises that will struggle with it. Like we all know, most businesses are going through some difficulties in the past couple of years. But having said that, if you look at the change in price level, you talked about the inflation rate of about 34.19%. We talk about the food inflation of about 40.87%. So even the prices of your services, most private sector operators have marked it up. In terms of the naira value, not in terms of the real value, in terms of naira value, virtually the revenue of most businesses have grown. So I think if we have to ensure that people that are working for you can eat, find their ways, transport themselves to the office, if you don't pay living wage, you will not get any service. They say if you pay peanut, you get more case, because you also want to employ people who are qualified, who are competent, who are committed to the job, and who will produce this. Remember that for private sector operators, it is the income generated by the employees that are used to pay them. So the private sector employers are going to demand for higher level of productivity so they can sustain this. The private sector operators are not constrained in terms of right sizing. They can wake up and say, look, you are not producing, so you have to go. So in the private sector, it's easier because the employees will throw in their best. The management and the leadership will demand for higher level of productivity. And if only we get the economy working, the private sector shouldn't have a problem. But unfortunately, the economy is not working, which is why the central government or the federal government said they will have intervened to support the private sector operators.
Now, the president has written the Senate asking that the 2024 budget be raised by 6.2 trillion naira. Out of that amount, 3 trillion, according to the president, is for recurrent expenditure. We imagine that that would have a role to play in the wage bill, with the implication of the 70,000 naira minimum wage. I wonder if the subnationals are factored in this as well. But that would raise the budget to over 30 trillion naira. Now, if the expected revenue of the 2024 budget is a little over 18 trillion naira, that would definitely have implications for external borrowing. I wonder if you have concerns in that regard, particularly for our budget, our debt profile, which is already burgeoning.
Yeah, clearly, the federal government increasing the budget from 28.7 trillion naira to about 35 trillion naira will entail that the government will borrow more. I can't see beyond the increase in exchange rate that the government is getting additional naira from conversion of the little crude we are seeing any income from. I can't see major revenue here for the government increasing. I think in the next couple of months, we may see even a slowdown in tax revenue because of businesses that are struggling to make profits. Of course, the government has come up with a windfall tax. I don't know if they send that bill, the Finance Act, the Finance Act has been approved or sent to the National Assembly. Assuming that is not done, then the government will, even at the federal level, they will struggle with meeting the revenue required to fund a budget of 35 trillion naira. So the government has consistently been borrowing. I think the central bank governor even made the allusion that we have received 5.1 trillion naira in foreign investments in the country in the past 6 months. Most of these foreign investments of 5.1 trillion went into purchase of treasury bills, which is federal government borrowing from both local and international lenders. So far, the federal government has borrowed about 19.9 trillion naira this year from through the debt management office by issuance of federal government bonds, or through the central bank by issuance of federal government treasury bills. So by the time you throw that into even our national debt, the 121 trillion that we are screaming about will be far, will look like a child's play. So clearly, we are dealing with a situation where our debt sustainability will become a challenge if we continue in the direction we're going. The key thing is that we must make the economy work. We need to improve productivity. The government should focus on how do we improve productivity, starting from agricultural productivity to the manufacturing sector productivity, so that ultimately the cake we bake is higher and the government can extract more revenue from a bigger cake or its share of the value that is added in the economy.
Now, let's go back to the states. I know you said earlier that, with increase in FAC allocation, it's only a matter of willingness of the states to be able to pay 70,000 naira minimum wage, not a matter of their inability to pay, so to speak. But given that even before this time, most states had been dependent on FAC allocation even to pay salaries, How can the states be made more viable, amid this windfall to shore up their internally generated revenue? And of course, to demand accountability of the funds that they're receiving now, such that we can look back at this time and say that indeed the states have judiciously put to use the increased resources that have come to them.
I think the first, starting from the first part of your question, Bukola, which is how do we make the states more economically viable? And that's where we have to come with leadership. Leadership defines everything. And I will tell you why. There's no state in this country that now has no comparative advantage, economic advantage. Is it in terms of agriculture? Is it in terms of solid minerals, in terms of crude oil production? So every state has something to offer. Look at the northwest states. We are now finding that there are several precious mineral deposits in several of the northern states. Zamfara State is one of the poorest countries in the world, in the country today. But Zamfara State is laden with so much of natural solid minerals that are being exploited. How come that the government over these years, knowing that we had those mineral deposits, never put processes in place to attract appropriate investors that will employ people there and process these raw materials or the input material, what we call extractive industry, into some level of finished products that we can export, so that they will derive income or tax revenue from the pay-as-you-earn of those employees. So if you go to a state like Benue, you know that they are major agricultural, it's a major agricultural belt. If you go to a country like Kenya, the major export commodity is vegetable and fruits. I mean, flowers. Who said we cannot export vegetables from a Benue or the entire north central part of this country, including Niger State, Nasarawa State? And then all the just put in place a structure that will encourage farmers to go to the farm and produce these things. The key thing, like I said, is that we must encourage, we must elect people who have the mental and leadership capacity to build an economy that is productive.
Mr. Chukwuma, thank you so much. In 1 second, if you will, I know 1 second is impossible. You mentioned leadership. Should we also amend our laws to accommodate some of these things that are in the concurrent list? Because some of them will run to that as an alibi for not doing anything or for lack of creativity.
No, in terms of, I don't think that's the issue around the Constitution. It's all about the quality of people will elect into office. A classical example is Abia State. I'm sure we're all celebrating Abia State. Abia State was a Paris state for 24 years. Within 1 year, everybody in the country celebrated Abia State. So what changed? Was it that Aba was imported from another city back to Aba? Or people migrated out of Abia State and new state people brought in? Just one person took over leadership and redefined the values and the importance or the relevance of the state. And I think we can replicate that across the country.
Well, thank you, MD Cowrie Asset Management Limited and economist Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Thank you so much for your insight on this particular subject matter.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go to that pharmaceutical subsector of the health sector and bring you up to speed as to what is going on and how the policies of government, whether or not, is impacting that sector positively or negatively. We'll bring you that detail when we come back. Join us again.
Welcome back. Of course, you know that the price of commodities, commodities rather, are not the only items affected by, skyrocketing costs in the market. Pharmaceutical products also have in the last few months also been affected due to, forex and dependence on importation. But the president recently signed an executive order, to increase domestic production and to bring down the price. So we're looking at achieving sustainability in that sub-health sector this morning. And joining us to have that conversation, we have Professor Cyril Osifo, who is the president of Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, who joins us via Zoom. We also have Comrade Bernard Enya, Vice President to Diabetes Association of Nigeria. He's also the co-chair, National Action on Sugar Reduction Coalition. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Very good morning. Thank you for having me.
Professor Osifo, I believe you can hear me as well.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, welcome to the program. But I'm going to start from, I'm starting with you, Professor Osifo. That executive order signed by the president was done last month. I wonder if it has been tested and if it has had any immediate impact on importation and perhaps domestic production of pharmaceutical products within the country. Give us some feedback.
Thank you very much for having me. For us in the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, and indeed all pharmacists, we rather the executive order was a welcome development. We were not surprised because there have been some interaction with government, particularly with the coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare. Yeah, the executive order have been in place for about 4 weeks. But you will agree with me that when policies come out, it will take some time before the full implementation. The nitty-gritty has to be worked out. One of the things I want to say is that when you have zero tariff on active pharmaceutical ingredient, API, medical devices, excipients, and what have you, it will go a long way to reducing the cost of production. However, the price of the unstable naira, dollar will also affect this particular process. The Manufacturers Association actually have cried out that when we have a stable currency or when we have an opportunity to plan effectively, then they will be able to do what they are expected to do. However, I must say that's a welcome development, and we must be a little bit patient, because even if you have to import certain things or you have to order certain things, it doesn't come within 24 hours or it doesn't come within 2 weeks, so to say. I'm sure we'll begin to see the effect of this in the next couple of weeks to come. But at the same time, I believe other agencies have been properly informed, government agencies like that are fully in tune or custom, so as to key into this process so that we have a seamless process of getting the raw materials, particularly the active pharmaceutical ingredients in production of drugs.
Yeah, well, we'll probably return to you to talk to us more about the nitty-gritty that need to be put in place before full implementation. But let me come to the studio. Comrade, I imagine you have some reactions to what Professor Osifo has said.
Yeah, I am one who is living with diabetes. And just a few months ago, the prices of a drug like insulin, is an injection used in managing diabetes. It used to be 3,500 some time ago. Suddenly, the price now rose to about 22,000 naira. And as I speak to you, I consume 3 of that injection in a month. So for me to be able to keep my drug in touch, which I take every day, in the morning and in the evening. So I spend like 66,000 naira just for the drug. And there's also a syringe, which is used to administer that injection. It's 600 naira. So in a day, I use 2. That's 1,002. If you also time that by 30, you discover that it's about 36,000 naira. 36 plus 66,000 naira is over 100,000 naira just for the drug. And we also know that to put food on the table today is another Herculean tax, especially with families and other challenges. So it has been a very big burden. Now, since the policies at the national is something that, even when the president have made a pronouncement, is not implemented immediately. And our people, the character in our people, the business people, is that once the price of a commodity rises up, it's difficult to come down, even when the enabling environment have been provided. So first and foremost is a very big blow on our side. Now, we don't know how to do this adjustment. As I sit here sometimes, I sacrifice my children's school fees for the drugs because I need to be alive to take care of them. And then by the time you go into what we call a blood sugar check, because I check my blood sugar every day before I go out. In the hospitals, blood sugar check is about 2,000 naira. So when you put all of this together, we are passing through a very big financial burden. So that is why we are coming out here. I'm speaking the mind of 11.2 million Nigerians living with diabetes. We are dying gradually. A lot of us with each passing day withdraw from the prescription because they can no longer afford the drug. Some even without telling their doctor, because the doctor will tell you, no, don't do it. But we usually withdraw from those drugs and then begin to manage with cheaper alternative, which would even endanger our life the more. So I speak here as one who is communicating our plight directly to government. This sensitization is to enable the president, the Senate president, and the senators, members of the National Assembly, who can formulate policies that can help to ameliorate our suffering. Else, we are breaking down with complications every day. You can see the way I am dressed. I don't wear any tight shoe, just to avoid any blister. Because if I sustain any blister here, the wound will not heal. And before you know, amputation will not come. You can imagine me at this my age. I'm 57 right now, only for me to be constrained to a wheelchair because whatever. So we try to be as careful as possible. Now, the moment the price change, it gives us another psychological effect. How do I meet up? What do I put on the table? The minimum wage we are talking about, you need to put that two monthly, to be able to meet up with the drug. And the pressure now goes to my family, my wife, and all other associates. Now, a lot of people keep helping. But the major problem we have in Nigeria regarding this diabetes intervention is the fact that there's no data. The data we even have is sketchy and is unreliable. And when data is unreliable, it becomes difficult for government to take a proper implementation plan. Now, we are living in a society where other people that are living with malaria, HIV, TB, we attend the same hospital. You are doing tests for this person free, you are not doing for the other. You tell me to pay, but the other person, the test is free. In malaria, they even come to the comfort of our homes to give us mosquito net just to prevent malaria. But there's nothing for diabetes. The only intervention from government is just some policies that are not even effective. The Minister of Health did not even know that some hospitals in some states don't even have a DEX officer for non-communicable disease, which diabetes is one of them. Now, if we don't have a DEX officer in the state that will cascade the policies and implement at the state level, then talk of the local government. So we have a lot of persons presenting with diabetes signs and symptoms, but yet they don't have access to quality health care. Instead of me to carry 20,000 naira sometime to buy a drug, I prefer to put a cup of garri and beans for myself and my children. So the situation right now is as serious as any other person would desire to listen to me. That is why the National Action on Sugar Reduction, all we are saying to government and the president is that the sugar sweetened beverages tax, it was approved actually by President Muhammadu Buhari. And the deduction, that was in 2021. The deduction started in June 2022 by the customs and excise. They are started with that responsibility to do the deduction. Whether it's the consolidated revenue fund or whatever, the money is there. Then suddenly this government, the present government now, we started hearing that they are suspending the deduction. Why? The Minister of Finance told us that they want to stabilize the economy for at least 6 months or so. Now, because sometimes we don't have confidence in what government is telling us, even if they are doing the right thing, because sometimes the moment the pressure is no longer there, they just forget. Now, those of us who make our demand legitimately as law-abiding citizens of the country. Sometimes they don't take us serious. But as soon as I make a pronouncement here that person living with diabetes all over the country will bomb Abuja Stadium, everybody now, the Senate, the reps, the police, SSS will come after us. Why do you want to bomb the National Stadium? Because you are not taking care of us. We feel that we are marginalized. Okay. We are rejected. Okay. That is why we are appealing that one of the solutions that will work is the SSB tax. One, it will discourage people from consuming excessive sugar, which is linked to non-communicable disease, diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease. There will be revenue for government that they will use and fund diabetes care.
We're going to come to that. We empathize with you. We must say that clearly. I can imagine how it is managing the situation given the economy, and also applaud and commend you for even thinking of others with the policy you're talking about. Prof, I'm bringing the question to you on this particular one. If there's a classic case of effect of government policy, it is seated right here. What's your response?
I quite sympathize with what my comrade is passing through. But it's not just diabetes alone. We also have other diseases that plague Nigerians. And you mentioned cardiovascular problems. We have people with cancer. The prices of medicine, like you said, actually have hit the rooftop. But you see, just like any other commodity, for medicine is special. It's such that if we don't specially take care of it so that we are sure of our medicine security, we may run into difficulties. I mentioned, if you want to set up, the government is saying, let's have about 70% local production. We welcome that because we need to produce our own drugs. And apart from that, we can even export these drugs to the West African sub-region because we are well endowed. But let me say categorically, it may take about 15 to 18 months if you want to start a new manufacturing outfit. And even if you have to import certain things, you don't just, with a click of the hand, get your drugs imported. It doesn't follow that way. There are many things involved, and the necessary agencies, regulatory agencies, will need to inspect, will need to be sure that what you are bringing are well fitting into what we require. But again, I want to say that the regulatory agencies need to be able to come together and kind of do it. There should be a reform in our regulatory agencies so that they can hasten and fast track some of these processes. You and I know very well that it takes, with the present economy, just like pharmaceutical products have also fallen into, you need to probably go to the bank to get some loan to be able to get some of this machinery and equipment down. And that would affect an entrepreneur and affect the whole process entirely. But like I said at the beginning, we have quarterly meetings with the coordinating minister where we discuss these things openly and bring on some of the issues that my comrade have raised. We're fully aware and we are working closely with government to make sure that these things come up. I agree with him that at times when you have opportunities and price of things have to come down, like the API, when they're on zero tariff, the price should come down. But some unscrupulous element may want to continue to rely on the old price. But don't forget that medicines have expiry dates, so you can't continue to keep them. But importantly, we are discussing with our colleagues and we're having discussions within ourselves such that we can, our activities will definitely affect the common man on the street. And that's where we talk about pharmaceutical care. Right now I'm in Ibadan because the community pharmacists, who are actually the first point of call by most Nigerians, are having a conference and I'm discussing with the executive to make sure that these opportunities are not thwarted, but rather we should work together to make sure that we bring the best to the country. One thing is certain, we don't have any other country but this country. We must make sacrifices. And I can assure you that pharmacists are willing to make sacrifices, including pharmaceutical manufacturing.
All right, Prof, two-in-one question. I don't know how much access, besides the incentive that government has given, maybe reduction in tariff and all of that, those importation, in terms of access to FX, which is key to be able to make these purchases, I want you to speak to that as quickly as you can, because at the end of the day, when the likes of GSK and Sanofi and the rest left, just a few companies leaving, and we're literally shaking because we're a high import-dependent country.
The rest left.
At the end of this. Go ahead, Prof.
Country. Yeah, I said that. Well, I said that in passing, but let me be very firm on that. The access to FX to get the pharmaceutical ingredient, you need to go to the bank. Ask.
All right.
Some of the manufacturing. All right. Affect some of the manufacturing of it. But I think we might take it a step further by asking that we provide a special window so that the manufacturing firms will have access to FX, and so as to be able to get these ingredients back into the country. And that will massively increase production. That will also massively reduce the price of pharmaceuticals. We are talking with our colleagues in the industry, and they are willing to make sure that the prices of these drugs come down.
Okay, let's come to the studio now. Comrade, I know that you've spoken to the impact of this high cost of drugs for diabetic patients on some of your colleagues. But I wonder if you have a lot more data on the impact on their health. 100,000 naira per day for a diabetic patient is quite high, and we know what the economic realities are saying. Does your association have more data on the impact of these high costs on the health of the 11.2 million diabetic patients that you have quoted?
Yeah, this data we are relying on is like an estimated, data, because the International Diabetes Federation, in their website, they have such data. Now, the challenge within Nigeria is that it's only at the, medical facilities, those who present, because we have diabetes type 1, which is for children. We have the type 2, mostly for adults, and then the gestational for, women in pregnancy. Now, that is where the data we lay our hands on is reliable. Unlike maybe like HIV and AIDS, where we have some standalone kind of testing points, where they just go to the rural communities to do that. That have not been happening now. Now, I will even say I am modest if I mention that figure, because diabetes, hypertension, they have a relationship. A lot of people have access to just checking their BP as against checking the blood sugar. And once you have blood sugar, your blood sugar is high, above the normal range, you are diabetic. And then the number having hypertension. Now, this relationship is what sometimes put together to extrapolate and maybe have an estimated. But we rather require a national survey. I was told that it is on, but I am not really part of it. So that we really want, the data I said is not reliable, but the very one I have mentioned can be verified from the IDF website, and then possibly even the Federal Ministry of Health should have this. Now, we are advising, as those of us who are feeling the pain, that they should try to make the maybe the test free. Because it is when it is free that so many people will just be going to the immediate past Minister of Health, Dr. Isaac. There was, I think, a circular or so that was approved when they had a conference of CMDs of teaching hospitals and specialist hospitals, that anybody who presents to the hospital should be subjected to diabetes test. With that, it can give us a reliable data we can always lay our hands on.
Okay, so the challenge is
the
data is unreliable.
Is unreliable.
But for those that you know who are perhaps under your association, and perhaps other associations like yours of patients with debilitating health condition, you mentioned cardiovascular, are there any engagements with government's regulatory agencies such that there will be interventions for such patients, like others who are who have HIV and AIDS, who are given free drugs? So are there any engagements with government regulatory agencies, and what is the feedback that you're getting?
We have made frantic effort to do that, but there's a gap. A conspicuous gap is that in most cases, we who are living the non-communicable disease are not involved in the planning. Now, if I take you back to the early 90s, where late Professor Lukoye Ransom Kuti was in charge of the Ministry of Health, there was this model of primary health care where the alma mater declaration that defined primary health care as essential health care based on practical, scientifically sound, and acceptable method of technology, made universally acceptable to individuals and community through their full participation. Now, it is the participation that is the gap. Now, they are setting National Health Insurance Authority, and the stakeholders that are put together, we are not there. So the perspective of the people living with that, there's some information I know, not just me, several other people living with non-communicable, that we know. Nobody to make the input at the planning level. And then, when you have only one office of the National Health Insurance Authority in the capital city, how about the rest of the local governments? We have also faulted NAFDAC. NAFDAC offices are always at the state capital. What happened to the rest of the local government? And when we tell them that you lack manpower, they will feel we are, it's an affront or so. But those of us who are practically in the field, do you know that people who present with non-communicable disease in the rural communities sometimes cannot come to, where the specialists are? A good example, I am from Cross River State. For you to travel from the capital city, Calabar, to the other side of the local government, you spend like 6-7 hours on the road. So if somebody will like come, Ogoja. Like Ogoja, Boki, or Banliku, if somebody who is sick considers that you will stay in the vehicle without your state of health and travel 7 hours, it means the day you are going to the hospital, you count as one. The day you are going to Calabar. The day you see the doctor, you count as another. And the day you travel, so you use 3 days to go and access services. So we are encouraging the agencies that in the build-up of making some of the policy or whatever, we should be involved. We have so much to contribute towards developing the agency.
All right, Prof, let's bring it back to you. I like the way the conversation is going. It's very practical. So you, I'm sure you were one of those at the table. How far-reaching is all of this policy in terms of what government has done? He's mentioned that, let's even leave the urban area, which there's still a struggle because a lot of people who live in the urban area still have issues with drugs and all of that. So when you talk about the rural community, what's the level of urgency that we need that we're not getting at that level? Because these are citizens of Nigeria that are supposed to be protected by the government.
Our regulatory agency, Pharmacy Council of Nigeria, have put in place supervisory roles of pharmacists, not just in the urban area, to also oversee what happens in the rural area. And there's a deliberate effort to make sure that more pharmacists go to the rural area, because those in the rural area, like you said, they are Nigerians and they need to access medicine properly. I think we can understand this, especially when government recently inaugurated a committee. I was involved, I was invited, and we are talking about prescription policy or in Nigeria, where we will have prescription drugs, and number 2 would be pharmacy-initiated medications, and then 3 would be over-the-counter drugs. I think we will strategize it just like happens all over the world, best practices. People can access medicines much easily, so that the physician is not inundated with every type of disease or illness. They can be referred to, and they can get specialist attention. At times, people come to the teaching hospital just to treat malaria, which could have actually been attended to even at the local government and whatever. Well, with the local government autonomy may improve some of these things we are talking about. I just want to also quickly say to my comrade, they also need to cross-check with the physician that some of the devices they are using are properly calibrated so that when they check their blood sugar at home, it will be that they are getting the right reading. Because at times when these devices are not properly calibrated, you may have some readings that may necessitate you taking some drugs that may not be necessary. That's just by the wayside. But I think going further is constantly engaging government, constantly discussing with people. And I like what the comrade said. I attended a workshop once in Brussels, and patients, it had to do with cancer, anti-cancer drugs. The cancer patients came and they were part of those that made presentations. And the question one of them asked is, you give us these medicines, you don't care what happens to us. You must be able to allow us to talk to you, give you feedback on what we are doing. I think that's one of the things I believe should come into healthcare. We must listen to the patient to know how they're faring with the drug. We must also even ask questions about the food they eat and things and what they do. If somebody doesn't eat properly and he needs to take a drug with food, a medicine with food, there's no way you can actually do that. You may start having some other effects which are not proper. And so all these things are holistic things that we must consider, that the average Nigerian need to be properly cared for. The average Nigerian who is sick cannot contribute to the workforce. And so when government realizes it, that's why I'm happy that it's not just Ministry of Health, it's Ministry of Health, Federal Ministry of Health and Social Welfare. We must look at the welfare of the populace. That's when we can actually attend to their health needs.
Indeed, a productive conversation, and in fact, it has shown that there are so many other sides to it. Perhaps, the next time we'll have another association representing another class of patients, such that we can, come up close with the realities that they're going through. We want to thank you very much, Professor Cyril Osifo, the President, Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. Thank you very much for your time on the program. We've also had Comrade Bernard Enya, Vice President to Diabetes Association of Nigeria and co-chair National Action on Sugar Reduction Coalition. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you.
And we switch themes now to the softer side of things. This time around, we'll be hearing an angelic voice on the program. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
And it joins us with our lovely voice, Progress Chukwunyem, right here in our studio. Welcome to the Morning Brief, Progress.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Let's relive that moment. And the winner is... Progress!
Yes.
What happened in your head?
I was so excited. I wasn't expecting to be called, but I was hoping to be called as well. And I was really excited. I was dumbfounded. I was mind blown. It was a great experience and a great time, a great moment. In fact, my best moments ever. Yeah. Winning Nigerian Idol.
You beat Zadok to emerge the winner.
He's amazing, but yes, I did.
Is that guy with like Timmy Dakolo's kind of voice, right?
Yeah.
So what was it like? Did you think it was going to go to him, considering the power that he also brought
Yes, I did, because to me, I felt like he had more experience. In fact, because we were roommates in the show, I looked up to him. He was an inspiration to me as well. So I expected, okay, maybe he deserved it as well. He deserved to win as well. But then I hoped to win because obviously, yes, I would root for myself. But then God did it and I won. Yeah.
So tell me, that journey for you, because it's a different thing when you sing some of us are good singers in the past.
Okay.
But now you go and you're seeing vocal powerhouses, literally an array of all of that. Were you intimidated? Were you concerned? Okay, let's see how this play out?
Well, I was never intimidated by anyone because I knew my worth. I knew my ability as well. But then coming on the show and hearing amazing voices as well, sometimes you'd be like, okay, we're onto something. But it was a beautiful experience. I learned a lot from every one of them, and I'm happy to be here.
So give us a sense of what goes on, during your participation in the Idols, particularly for potentials who would like to be in that
Bukola
kind of
sings,
academy.
maybe she...
No, my Jeffrey. We all sing.
We've been trying to make her,
Well, you're great at what you do.
It's a trio of singers, all three of us. But do you pick your own songs, or do your trainers pick your songs for you? Do you pick songs that are in your comfort zone? And what is it that, do you believe about that process that develops you and makes you better than when you first entered the academy?
Okay, so from the auditions, you get to pick your own song. When you're meeting the judges for the first time, you do what's comfortable to you. But when you get on the show, like the live shows, we have theme every week. So there's a particular list where you get to pick from. So it's still your choice at the end of the day. So if you're doing R&B this week, you have like a list of R&B songs where you get to pick from. But the entire experience gets to shape you as an artist. Most of us, like for me, for example, I went on the show just knowing how to sing. I didn't know what else but to sing. But it shapes you to be a better artist, a better brand, how to carry yourself, your personality, and your music very well, yeah.
So do you get a song and be like, oh, how am I going to deliver this? I'm not an R&B person. I'm not an Afrobeat person. And you're like, oh.
So we have coaches.
And what was the most challenging one for you?
Okay, so there was a time we had, and that was, people say that that's my biggest performance. So there was a week we had like the showstopper performance where we get to do like those Michael Jackson kind of songs. You have to sing and dance. It was quite challenging. But then, like I said, it shapes you, right? So when we pick those songs, you'll be like, oh, how am I going to pull this off? But then you have your coaches there to train you and speak to you and just make you better as an artist and showmanship. We had Kafi, the dancer, on the show. So having people like that around you, teaching you showmanship and craftsmanship, is just amazing, yeah.
So how did the dance go for you? Because you appeared to me when I watched you like what we call a flat-footed singer. I know a flat.
Yeah.
What's this lady now? Jennifer Hudson.
Yes.
She's a flat. She's a vocal powerhouse,
Yes.
but she's flat-footed. So
Yes.
more like a choir girl who wants to stand and just kill it with her voice.
Yes.
How did you manage all of that?
And we had the likes of Kafi who put us through with the moves and the dancing and all of that. But it's training. Just having that much training from the coaches and Kafi as well just helped, yes, put everything together.
And you seem to me like, a soul singer, even listening to your single.
Yes.
And listening to you perform Angel, I Need an Angel by
Yes.
Ruben Studdard, and Uncle Suru. Those were amazing performances.
Thank you.
So how has that shaped your own personal sound, and how do you describe your own personal sound?
So I grew up in church, and church singing has
You're still
so
in church.
much. Of course. Church singing has so much soul. So I get to put that into my music and make music that resonate with people and their belief and what you believe in and all of that. So and that's what I brought on the show as well. I chose songs that I knew that I could relate with and I could express, right? And that's the soul that you're talking about. And that's the kind of music that I'm still making and I'm still going to make.
Nigeria is not, I wouldn't say we're not receptive to that kind of music. Because we know that a couple of people who started on that platform started like that. I can call Inyanya, I can call Praise, all of these gentlemen who, when we saw them on the stage, even the very first Project Fame, this is not Idol now, Project Fame, Dari Asade, we've had him here. When we caught him in South Africa, it's just so, but eventually they had to evolve. But we've seen people like Johnny Drill stay true to his sound.
Yes.
And somehow people just kind of accept it. Are you going to stay true to your soul, or you're ready to blend and survive?
I'm definitely going to stay true to my soul, like my soul music and the kind of music that I make. But sometimes as an artist, you get to diversify because R&B, truth is, that's not our mainstream music here. in Nigeria. It's Afro beats and all of that. But you have to stay true to your sound and what you love and what you're comfortable at doing, because there's always an audience for you. Whether you like it or not, there's always an audience for you. So making what you love and what you're comfortable at is just the best choice you can make. But sometimes you can diversify and just go. You never can tell what you can do until you try.
Yeah, because I've seen Timi Dakolo, for instance, evolved.
And they are always amazing.
So I'm talking about the commerce of the arts. You know, there's the culture that has to balance with the commerce for there to be sustainability and survival.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about what I'm thinking?
Yes.
Speaking of which, are you going to also stay true to your theme? Are you going to stay with gospel or with inspiring conscious music? Or you're going to go the commerce way as well as you evolve?
That's what I make. I make gospel music and inspiring conscious music, and that's what I'll stay true to.
And you're not going to be compelled by the pressure of commerce?
I'm not going to be compelled by that.
How would you rate yourself at the moment? Because I can imagine, you know, people who win this competition, there's a lot of pressure. Like, okay, you say you're the winner, so let's see how you succeed in the industry. Stage is one kettle of fish. The industry is another business in itself altogether. Have you been approached by a label? What exactly is going on? Because we haven't seen your record go mainstream. I want you to speak to all of that.
Well, I know for me, I know it's a process, right? And I have to take it one step at a time. So I'm taking my time to make great music and just constantly put myself out there and keep showing myself, keep showing up, keep doing what I'm meant to do, which is making music and performing, being in the faces of people, and not let the pressure, because yes, there's pressure, but not let the pressure get to me. And then learn every day, because like you said, aside the talent, there's also the business part of music. So I'm constantly learning about that every day, royalties and all of that. And if record labels come, great. They haven't come yet, so I'm just indie. I'm an independent artist right now, but I'm constantly growing. I'm choosing to grow my craft. Yeah.
And are you also preparing yourself mentally for the crossroads that will come along the way? You know, you hear now and then OGs in the industry talk about how a lot of young talents are not prepared for music business as against music production, and they go on to sign on contracts that have a lot of loopholes in them, and then they fall out with record labels, and then they go solo, not just music, not just singing, but also music production, and then somehow they're frustrated out of the scene. Are you aware of such stories as a young? You're not such a young talent anymore.
All right, all right, Progress. You're going to respond to Bukola's question, but we have to go for this quick commercial break. When we come back, just hold your thoughts. Sure. We'll be right back.
All right.
Cube is available in beef, chicken, jollof, and shrimp flavors at attractive prices of 100, 200, 500 naira, along with saver and super saver packs.
Terra Cube, unwrap joy, unleash taste.
Progress hasn't gone anywhere. He has a question and he needs to give us an answer. Progress?
Well, I know that you already caught the drift, Progress, so go ahead.
Yes. So I'm mentally prepared for the crossroads and whatever happens like in the future. And I have like one of the decisions that I've made is having the right people around me, having the right team. I have my lawyer who constantly advises me and tell me, okay, this is what you need to do. This is where you need to go. So there's no contract that I read that I don't like pass through my lawyer first or whatnot. So I'm prepared. Yeah.
So are you off the? How long ago was this?
2 years ago. That was 2022. Yeah.
So the car is now yours, right?
It's all mine.
Yes. And the 100 million naira as well.
30 million naira.
Oh, 30,
okay.
Well, 100 million naira worth of prizes.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So are you signed to a record label now, or
Right
you're an
now,
indie artist?
I'm an independent artist right now, yes.
How is that going?
Well, it's a struggle because you get to do everything by yourself. You get to produce the music. You get to promote the music and all of that. But you need to keep going and you need to grow. So it's a learning process for me. Yes, it's a learning process for me.
And of course, I imagine that, the Idol platform has brought a number of opportunities while you wait for all the other structures, to promote your music.
Yes.
So has that also been happening for you in terms of shows and brand opportunities?
It has been happening. Nigerian Idol was a life changer for me. It has been happening. I've been getting amazing events to perform at and meeting great people. I collaborated with Dr. Tim Godfrey, the gospel artist, on a song together, Yeshua. And I recently released a single this year's January, Follow You, and the video is also out in collaboration with the band, who was a judge on the show as well. So it's been great, yeah.
So are there people you're planning to work with in the industry?
Well, I want to work with as much persons that I can.
Names.
You need names? Number one, Johnny Drill. He's like a huge inspiration.
Have you made any,
it's like an open invitation to him, right?
Well, yes. We've met a couple of times in quite a number of events, and yeah, I'm just waiting for that perfect opportunity where I would be together in the studio with him and make an amazing
Okay, so you're
record.
not selective in terms of collaborations, about who you would want to work with, either it's secular or gospel.
Well, we have to have same belief. Like I said, I make gospel music and inspirational and conscious music. So if we're not doing that, then I don't think there would be collaborations.
So why Johnny Drill? You just mentioned one. I want 3 names, by the way, if you don't mind.
They're just
maybe their name and why. But you're going to sing for us. My producer tells me I have less than.
Oh my God!
I have less than 2 minutes.
Okay. There's so many artists. We have Johnny Drill. We have Timi Dakolo. We have Moses Bliss. Yes, we have Mercy Chinwo. These are huge.
So there's no Davido. There's no Whiskey. There's no Burner.
Jeffrey, be kind.
I'm just saying.
They are amazing artists and doing really, really great and inspirations too in their own rights, and they are amazing. I still do movie collaborations too. I do movie soundtracks as well, and most of the time the songs are not gospel, right? But then, just as movies make believe, the music is also.
So in winding down, you're going to do 2 things for us.
Okay.
So we're trying to sign Bukola. So we've been trying this thing 7 months now. People are not helping us. So you're going to do your own original,
okay?
Maybe for 30 seconds, and maybe do something, maybe Uncle Suru or some other thing that you're comfortable with. 30 seconds. Can you do that for us? So your camera is just in front of you. Yes. Yeah. So as we wind down.
Okay, so this is my most recent song. It's called Follow You. It's out on all platforms, and the video is also out on YouTube. So please stream, share, and like. Thank you. It says, you know they ever stone when you reach me. You know they ever stop to they show me love. Even when I fall, now you pick me. Now what I don't do to deserve this love. I no go fit to lie. Now you blow my mind. If not my matter, you they always stay inside. You know they lose God. I they wonder why. Oh, why? I go there, follow you anywhere you go. Follow you, now you the lead road. Promise say you no go ever leave me go. You got me, that's one thing I know. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. You're the reason I sing this song. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. With you I can never do no wrong. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. You're the reason I sing this song. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. With you I can never do no wrong.
Progress, Chukwuya. Good job. Fantastic. Thank you so much. We didn't want you to get into the spirit.
Right.
So we had to pull it out. Winner of Nigerian Idol 2 years ago. Thank you so much, Progress.
Thank you so much for having me.
Chukwuya, and we wish you the very, very best in on your journey. as you embark on this very big one
Yes.
going ahead. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and, of course, your usual company. Sunrise Daily is up next. I'm Jeffrey Zama.
Stay tuned to all our programs on Channels Television. We'll be back again tomorrow with a morning brief. I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.